Hello everyone, it's Elizabeth from the Smart Stitcher. This week's tutorial takes you through how to create a pattern for a fingerless glove, a bit like the gloves I've got on in front of me now. We're actually going to be creating a pattern for the red glove using the pattern that we created for our gloves. You may remember this if you've been following my series. We're going to be working off of this to create the pattern for this, and then in other tutorials we're going to be talking about how to create the patterns on the back of the hand, and also then how to construct your gloves and put everything together. So let's get into it. Working from your base pattern like this can get a bit confusing, so I'm just going to talk you through what I've done, and then I'm going to show you on another piece of paper which hasn't got as much information on. So the first thing I did was position my hand back on my original drawing, just because I wanted to then mark in where my knuckles landed. So I was able to then just draw a little line, make a mark by the sort of that first joint, mark the line on each of them. I've then, because I didn't want the leather sitting sort of too much in the actual crease of my finger, I wanted it to sort of be a little bit lower. I've then drawn another line that's 1/2 centimetre below, so that my finger will come up, and I don't want sort of necessarily too much glove in the crease of my finger. I've then come down and I've added another line because I wanted to make this a slightly shorter glove, so that it looks a little bit like this one here, and I've got my base line there. Now for this particular style I didn't necessarily want to start adding in any extra hardware at this point, so I'm going to stick with the revised outline of my pattern on my template here as well, so I can still get it on and off, but it means that it's slightly shorter. I've marked the position where the fingers are going to go, and now I'm going to just transfer all of that onto a sheet of paper to show you what I mean. When it's finished, our trank for our fingerless glove is going to look a little bit like this. And remember, we reversed to do the left hand side. This is the right hand side that I'm showing you here, and in order to get that, I'm going to take the information from this particular drawing. I'm going to sort of show you on tracing paper how to start to lay it out, and it's very, very similar in fact as to what we did with our trank and when we were making our full glove pattern. So the first thing I've done is I've folded my tracing paper in half, and then I've just come down to the bottom because I want the base of my glove to still be at right angles to that vertical line. I've made a mark just very, very slightly in pencil on the tracing paper. I've then flipped the tracing paper over and in effect made sure that my crease was in exactly the same position. I've then traced that little mark again, and what I'm now going to do is open my tracing paper out. I'm going to turn it upside down so hopefully you can see this, but I just want to line up my dots and check that I'm also at right angles. So I'm just going to draw my line in, just check that my pencil goes through the middle of the mark, and draw my baseline in. So I've gone a long way across my sheet because that's going to enable me then to start to line everything up. And if I just use the markings on my cutting mat, yeah, I can see that I'm actually pretty happy with how that is looking and how that is lining up. I won't have it floating in the mid square, but I can see that my vertical crease is vertical, and I'm happy with the horizontal line on the base. So now we're going to pop that onto our template and start drawing everything in. So I'm going to line up the base of my fingers and the base of the glove with the horizontal line that I've just drawn, and I want my vertical line to also stay in position. It can help if you've got some weights to just pop a weight down on the paper just to stop it moving, because that's really frustrating when you're drawing everything in. So I'm going to start by drawing in my lines, and this is very much the same way that we did when we were transferring our pattern markings. So I'm going to just make sure that everything is lined up and we're going to get these lines drawn in. I've just done that first one there, and then I'm going to repeat that now so that I come down to the points, and then I'll talk you through that next step. So to create the trank pattern for our fingerless glove, what we're doing in effect is exactly the same process as we did when we drew up the pattern for our full-size glove that we did in an earlier tutorial. So on our pattern here, I've now drawn out, and I've started to label it, the back of the right hand. When we are creating our pattern, remembering that the points on the back of the hand that mark the base of the fingers are actually a centimetre lower, because that echoes the difference from that sort of top and that sort of slope from the sort of where the base of the fingers stop to the top of the hand there. So all three at the base of my fingers are marked in on my template with that lower cross. You'll also see that I've marked in just a very lightly drawn out square, and that was just to sort of give me a sense of where the pattern on the back of the hand was going to go, but I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. So for the style of fingerless glove that I'm doing, I want my fingers on the back of my hand as well as the palm view to be the same length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my pattern over and make sure that it's nicely lined up, and then I'm going to draw in the rest of the outline as it is. I'm also going to draw in the lines that obviously form the base of the fingers, but this time I've just got to remember to move the base of the fingers up by a centimetre so that they are just reflect the shape of the hand. So I'm going to draw in the outline, draw in the lines that will cut down to sort of create the fingers, but I'm not drawing the square that I've got on the back of the hand, because obviously we're going to add in the thumb as well. To help me get the thumb piece in the right position, I've marked on this little cross that we've got here, and this is the base of the knuckle. This actually translates to being point D on our glove pattern, and that looks a little bit like this on this one I have already created. So to help me get the thumb in the right place, I'm going to mark on point D, and I'm also going to extend the line from the index finger down a little bit further, because point D also goes through the point of point B there, which helps me get everything in line. So how does that look on our particular piece? So I've marked on my point D here, and I've drawn the vertical line down, extending it, although I'm quite happy with that, although my lines seem to be a little bit off today, so I do apologise, bear with me. I've got my cross there, and now I'm going to get my thumb template so I can use an existing pattern. So this is the one that you can download free on my website, and I can draw this in. Now it's going to look a bit strange, because normally when I would line up everything, I would recommend, obviously working from your template, that you would then line up your vertical lines, make sure everything's in position. But if I do that with this particular pattern piece, if I line up the base of the fingers, you can see where I've gone from my original drawing, which was this one, and sort of scanned that in and worked on it on the computer. I've obviously kind of added a bit of extra width, which is what's throwing my eye out now. So this was sort of scanned in and traced, but I can also see that if I go back to what was my original drawing for that particular template, if I line everything up, I can see that I do in fact have everything in the right position. So for this particular tutorial, what I'm going to advise is that always make sure that you've got that line coming down with point D already marked. If you found that you're using, say, my template, and maybe the lines don't quite add up, or you know yours are slightly bigger than mine or smaller, I would always advise marking on point D, keeping everything then in the right position, sort of lining up with the base of the fingers and line up with point D, line up your base, make sure that is horizontal, and just check that your lines are vertical. So normally I would want the vertical line on my pattern piece to be central here, but because I've just had to adapt with my patterns, I'm now going to work from point D because I know that's true, and I'm going to draw in the shape of my thumb. Now if I happen to go outside of my circle, I can always come back and refine it. I'm going to use a ruler on the straight edges, and I'll know once I've got everything in position if I need to then do that. So we'll draw that in. So I do apologise if I've caused any confusion, but if you're always working from point D, then you will always have everything in the right place. So we'll just mark those particular points on A, B, C and D, palm view, right hand. So let's just have a look at how that now looks. So we've got our fingers that we've cut. Now you can have your fingers any length you wish. I've just gone to the first knuckle, but if you wanted to have everything level, then you would obviously move your points back up on your original pattern piece and make the tops of your fingers in one straight line. You can do anything you like. You could have them at an angle, you know, anything to sort of finish that. I've just sort of gone for almost sort of like a style that's very similar to a driving glove, and I'm going to go straight across, but I'm going straight across underneath each knuckle to get the particular style here. So now I've marked everything on, I've got my thumb piece in position, I can go back and just tidy up some of the lines where my tracing might just be a little bit uneven. I've marked my points on, and then I'm now going to glue this particular pattern onto card, and then I can cut everything out so that it's ready to use. Now the next thing we're going to do is to sort out our thumb piece and our fourchette, because obviously they're not full size either, so we have to make some adjustments there too. Point B on the glove template is actually really handy because point B is also at the point of the first knuckle of the thumb. So when it's made in the glove, point B is that sort of lower point here when on your sort of trank and on your particular pattern piece. So what I'm going to do in effect to create my pattern piece is to basically take a horizontal line right the way across my pattern, and in effect, if you imagine you've got your vertical line which we used when we were constructing our thumb template, and then I'm just going to cut straight across from point B at right angles so that I can create my thumb template. So I've put this onto tracing paper and then glued it onto card and made sure that I've marked it up so I know which is my left and which is my right. To make the fourchette, again, a sort of a very similar process. Obviously we're not using the full length of the finger, so we don't need to cut a full length fourchette, but we do need to cut a fourchette that's going to hopefully be long enough for what we want to do, because there's nothing more frustrating than realizing that will be very short. So what I've done is I've measured the length of the fingers here, and I've gone with what was the longest measurement, which was about 5 centimeters, which was the side of this particular finger here. And what I've done is I've added on another couple, and I've just created a shorter version. So I think I made mine about 5 centimeters in length as my longest measurement, and then I added a couple on 7 centimeters just to give me a little bit more to play with, so that when we come to make the glove, what we don't want to be doing is to sort of start cutting these fingers down. What we want to do is to be able to then trim the fourchette to fit. So I've got a slightly shorter version, some of which we're going to be cutting off when we actually fit the glove to our hand and into our fingers. So we've now created all of our templates for our fingerless glove. Make sure that you have glued everything onto card, marked up the right and left hand side, and also poked a hole with an awl or something sharp through at the base of your fingers.